Today we have the CEO of BreachAware, Andrew Alston. Andrew has over 30 plus years in the IT doing cyber before the word cyber was even hijacked by marketing. From rolling out the first WANs in the UK and multi-tenanted SOCs to leading the rollout of a radioactive indicating network in response to Chernobyl, to the first mobile-enabled bank, Andrew has led many large outsourced bids and teams in the finance and government sector and dramatically changed my view and the purpose of life after losing his arm in an accident.
Nearly losing my arm.
Losing your arm. Okay. Well, don't lose your arm. It looks like you still got your arm. Thank goodness you healed up,
yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Glad to hear that. You left the big corporate world to try your hand in a startup, leading the creation of BreachAware, growing the business to every continent in the world, except for Antarctica. But he's working on that. So he has a free service that's used across 143 countries and an exciting future that awaits us. So, Andrew, start out. How much stolen data is out there and that is circulating, and why should we be concerned?
Well, I was looking at the stats. Our researchers reckon there's about 80,000 to 85,000 terabytes of stolen data that's accessible. Wow. So if you consider that's mostly based on plain text, you could just imagine how much data is out there, and that is a pretty good guess. I looked up on some of the search engines today just to back up my stats, and they said 75,000 to 80,000. But by the time they've actually written that, it's I reckon it's up to 90,000 now. So, yeah. And if you consider that most of the data out there covers the population by what? 4 or 5 times the population of the globe. And you're spending all this money on monitoring your own infrastructure. You're spending all your time monitoring your own accounts. Yet at the same time, that data is out there, publicly available, ready to be exploited by hackers who are using it because it's a free resource. And with AI, hate to use that word, coming down the line with some of the hackers, they can just run macros, run algorithms, and do massive attacks or focused attacks. It is a big worry, and it's often ignored. Well, people just ignore the data. They just say it's only the data.
Yeah, but I mean, some of this data has passwords in it, right?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, they all have the key ones we look at is emails, passwords. There's always IP addresses, but it goes up to about 128 different data types. And like when COVID came along, you were adding COVID data types, or then Bitcoin came along, so you got different variations of Bitcoin data types. But the key ones though are, obviously email addresses and passwords, IP addresses, usernames, and it just goes on. So it's you can, when I see people on LinkedIn saying happy birthday, it's my birthday today, I think, okay, right, that's another bit of data I can get for credential stuffing. People just throw their data around in conversation or interact with third parties or social media, just like throwing confetti around. So it's all about making people and organizations aware of how important your data is and where it's going and who has access to it. And privacy is dead.
Yeah, unfortunately. So what type of data has more value nowadays?
Well, health data is worth about 5 times more than finance data. Health data has permanence, so you can't get rid of you can't change your health. It's not like a bank account. You can open and shut your details and change it. it is so valuable to the hacker. It's open to fraud. You can, particularly on bills, your health information. If you consider that 51% of the breaches in the USA are healthcare organizations, the second data, which is the most valuable, is legal data. So if you consider going into a sweet shop and you want to go in and buy all your favorite sweets, and someone's put them into a bag for you already, they filtered them, the most valuable data, the high net worth data, legal attorney data is something special. Then the third most valuable is education data. It's where hackers can hide longer. So they could go into a school, just use some kid's information, hide for 10 years, creating their own credit profile until that child starts a bank account, or the parents set them up with some policy, and they find out, oh my god, my credit rating's so bad, and realize that John Doe's been used in New York for the last 10 years on credit cards and hasn't paid them back. And then you go into the finance element, and then it pitters down. But you're talking about health data is the most important because it's got permanence. Legal data because of the filtering and the high net worth and the sensitivity. And then education is, in my view, the third one. And if you think about it in our lives, in the USA, you're born with a social security number, aren't you?
Right.
So, Sweden, they were completely digitized. In the UK, you get a national insurance number when you're about 17. But also you might get an NHS number, National Health Service number, if you're a kid and you've had some operation at hospital. So we're all tagged through life with these single numbers, and you can't really change them. So, as soon as you're born, or as soon as you interact with government, you're tagged and you can't change it. So it's all about kind of managing what you do. And a lot of people don't know about it. I said on a previous podcast to someone, from a knowledge perspective, we've got to be in the top 1% of the world that understand the implications of data has on governance, and the implications data has on technology. So it's just getting the message out there, and people often ignore it.
Right. So what can we do to reduce this risk of?
Oh, well, the usual stuff. We'll ignore social media because I just don't want to go down that route. We had a graduate sign up to work for us under work experience. A graduate, she was a 16, 17-year-old girl doing work experience from a school in London. And she was not the normal sort of girl because she understood the implications and her parents' work and privacy. But it's making sure that when people sign up to things, they understand what they're signing up to. So when you tick the terms and conditions, which no one reads, you understand that I'm going to give away, but in my privacy, I'm going to give away these data types. I'm going to give away my images. So, but people don't do that. Do I look at the T's and C's? I just don't sign up to anything. And they did say that if you sign up to TikTok, you do have to have a more of an advanced brain to understand the T's and C's in TikTok because they're pretty complex. From a business perspective, if your data is actually being found in a breach, you've got to audit it. You just can't say it's only it's data. It won't do any harm. What you've got to do, you've got to verify who in your company has been found on a third-party breach. So it's all about risk management. It's not about panicking. It's all about risk management. It's all about problem management. How do I mitigate the risk? Go through some problem management skills to verify what's real or not, what's not real. So I would generate a list of breaches for the supply chain. I would compile a list of employees current employees and ex-employees within a breach, and then make sure the ex-employees have been disconnected from any of the services that they previously had, and those email addresses are now cut off or stopped. I'd also look at the types of breaches people have been involved in and the potential internal impacts. Talking to a friend the other day, and I was mentioning about a betting site, and he said, "Oh, well, if someone gets found on a betting site, you just tell them off." And I said, "It's more than that, because if you're an important organisation and you're using a work email address and it's been found on a betting website, one, are they following company compliance rules on using work email addresses for personal purposes? Two, does betting sites come under it? Three, does that person have a money problem at home and a well-being problem? Four, is he in a position at work that if he does have money problems, he has access to cash, money, whatever, because he might have financial difficulties. And then it goes on to the well-being aspect on HR. So there's a lot more just to say that, oh, he's been found in a betting breach, or he's been found buying clothes or motorbike parts from a retailer. And then it's all that simple analytics of the impact of what they do. And also, I mentioned about ex-employees. I mean, verifying the status of all email addresses associated with former employees, you'd be amazed how many old email addresses are still floating about and potentially can give you access, because once that person's left the company, they haven't followed governance. Governance plays a massive bit. But then again, I know I'm talking too much here. When you're analysing the data, you then have to look at the high level exec people, because they'll be great targets for BEC attacks, business enterprise compromise, business email compromise attacks. So, I remember a breach came in over a year ago, and it was called, I have to say this properly because you've drunk too much, you might say the wrong words here. It was called ship spotting. And the breach came in, and I said, I bet you a load of executives get called out on this. And it was a UK website, and obviously a lot of the execs do sailing. And I said, you're going to get some high net worth people caught out on that. And that data will be floating about. And the hacker, if they've got any sense, will start doing back emails on a Friday saying, hi, George, can you sign off this invoice, blah, blah, blah. So it's all that sort of stuff. And then the final analysis is mitigating the spoof emails, because you do find you get a lot of duplication of spoof emails out there that aren't real, that cause a hindrance. So you've got to go through a process of blocking them as well. And then we go back to the boring stuff, which is the most important stuff in cybersecurity, the governance. So it's reviewing company policy, following the regulations. If it's a breach, do you follow the SEC regulations out in the States or GDPR? Do you inform the authorities? You have to then go through a training program from the board to the shop floor on making people more aware of the potential implications, and it goes on and on and on. So, it's a complex thing.
Yep, absolutely.
That's a long answer, wasn't it? That's a long answer.
One of the things I wanted to bring up and just get sort of your viewpoint on this. I do occasionally myself talk about how important to have visibility and context on whatever you find, no matter whether it's incident response or, data breaches and that sort of thing. Recently, I was shown to be exposed on an email saying, oh, this email is compromised, but there was no context. Maybe you can explain what you do and the type of context you put together when you see breaches.
So a breach will come in. We'll define what sort of company it is. We'll define the email domain. most email domains share the same as the web domain. We'll highlight the registrar, the registry, when it was created, the data types exposed, and then all the data types involved in the breach, and then the number of people involved in that breach, the date we've either loaded it up or the date that the breach was actually recorded. 99% of the data that's been loaded up by most companies, such as ourselves and the competition, do not make the news. They just don't make the news. It's only the more intriguing ones that make the news. So, you just there was one. There was a Greek bank, and we never like to name the breaches. And once the breach comes in, you then the person who signed up with consent then gets an email, says, "Hi Bob, your email domain blah 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 has been found in this breach with these data types, and these are the people involved." So consent plays a big part. Without consent, you can't run the service.
Now, one of the things I was going to get at there is sometimes the email is used as a username. And so sometimes, so the breach may be some other company or some other service completely separate from the email. So is that something that you separate?
Yes. So the email is fundamentally separate. If it comes under username, it will come under username. So all the data is anonymized and tagged. If the only data we really look at is email and then the IP address and the password, which is encrypted, everything else is tagged because we don't want to hold that data. Just imagine someone trying to hack us. That would be the biggest hack in the world. That's why all the data is anonymized. So it's kind of useless unless it's not useless to the customer that signed up to it. But what's really interesting though, if you do come up on a breach, it's the third party supply chain aspect that's also forgotten. So say I was doing some, this is all in the public domain, and I did a chart for the Metropolitan Police Force. Well, I did it for a consultant of mine, and you can go and use our free tool and put in Met Police, and it comes up with a few thousand compromised credentials.
And that's on BreachAware.com website.
Right? Yeah, and that will show you their footprint, and you'll think, oh wow, they've been compromised. Well, no, you step back, you be sensible, and you think, right, that they've got a risk there. How do I mitigate that risk? But so you go through what I just told you earlier on. But the next thing to do is I wonder who they talk to. Well, they talk to the Lord Mayor's office. So will that footprint within the Met Police Force have a direct kill chain link to the Lord Mayor's office? And because the City of London Police Force is right in the middle of London, it's a separate entity in itself, will that footprint for the Met Police Force, all that data that can act as a drop-off point, an attack point, whatever you want to call it, will it have an impact on the City of London Police Force? And then you're thinking, well, who are the third-party suppliers monitoring the Met Police Force? And it goes on. The supply chain impact goes on, often ignored.
Sometimes do you make recommendations or you help point out all those connections or interconnections? Or
Yeah, we get asked to do that occasionally. Most of the MSPs partners we work with, we have two sorts of customers. Most of the MSPs are pretty well switched on. So we got some brilliant customers, partners, and what they do is that they realize that by looking at compromised credentials and all that, the data footprint, if I have a people, process, or governance, technology, cybersecurity strategy, that they will go through their governance process and they'll sell all their value add on top, and then they'll look at the technology. So it has a knock-on effect. There's not one thing out there that is a silver bullet that will get rid of the risk. It's all about marginal improvements on reducing the risk. The people element, government's place of governance is the boring bit. That's the most important bit in cybersecurity. And people don't like talking about it because it's boring. And then technology.
Yeah. So the MSPs actually use your servers to leverage as an additional source of knowing that something went wrong in security in their companies.
And the way we played it is the reason why we've started the free service is because we wanted everyone to look at their footprint, and we made sure that no one had to sign up, so we wouldn't capture any sales data. We don't hold data. Because I hate going onto a service and say, get a free report, and I have to put my name in, and then I get bombarded with sales stuff. So we're just thinking, let's give this away free. And it's had a big impact on usage. But it's the next element is, how do you make people use our service by which wouldn't have a big cost implication. So if you make your service inherent costs rather than an expensive cybersecurity add-on cost, it becomes a no-brainer. So when our customers talk to a new client, they just add on BreachAware because it's such a small price. And then if you look at the supply chain aspect, we that's the unredacted one, the more expensive one. And where you can look at Bob Carver at bigcompany.co.uk. But if you just wanted to look at your supply chain and no need to ask for consent, all you do is add on bigcompany.com. We're not looking at Bob Carver. So if a breach does come in, they'll go through to their SOC and says, bigcompany.com's been found in this breach. And they can go up to them and say, do you realize you've been found in this breach? What are you doing to protect the integrity of the supply chain? That's like £1 a month. It's a crazy price. So I'm selling that. Should stop it.
You can't even buy lunch for that.
No. Well, that's it. But our other service,
you can't buy a pint for that.
Well, the other service is literally £5 a month. So the price of a pint. There's an IPA down the road, Indian Pale Ale, in the local brewery.
Right.
And it's £5.50. That's a lot. If you go to London, £7 for a pint of Guinness.
Wow.
So for less than a pint of Guinness in London, you can use our service a week. That's crazy.
Yeah. That's a phenomenal value then.
I haven't really thought about that.
Where
I usually use Starbucks.
Where can you get any security service for that type of price? No.
Well, and that's it. And it's we're quite excited for the future because it's all about the analytics. So it's all about what we want to do with the data. And I know I've been banging on about our individual service we're launching. It works. So this will be our corporate service skin to go on an Android and iOS phone. But we're as a company looking for a sponsor. The whole thing works. We've been mucking about with it. It's quite good. But there's been so much demand from our current program. It's all about juggling priorities. But if you understand that data plays an importance, why do you spend all this money? Why do these companies spend all this money protecting the data inside the castle, when outside the castle, they just bloody ignore it? And it's the same data.
Agreed.
It's all about risk management.
So how do you identify these breaches, and what type of sources do you look at to be able to find these breaches?
So we go to the online paste bins. They used to be big years ago, and you get trophy hackers dumping data, but they're not very popular, and you don't find they're all free online resources. You can sign up to them. Or we have researchers that go onto the forums, and every bit of data you find, you've got to have provenance to demonstrate you haven't bought it. So every breach that comes in, I don't want the NSA or FBI or GCHQ knocking on our door to say, did you buy that data? So we follow the rules stringently. If there's no provenance, we won't load it. And then when you get data in, you might have 10 million lines. And you're thinking, 10 million email addresses. Well, you've got to pass the data So that might take it down to 2 million, or it might take up to 12. Then you got to get rid of the spoof emails, the dupe emails.
So a lot of data normalization type of work.
Yeah.
Cleaning
AI,
up.
AI, Bob.
Yeah. And are you starting to use some AI machine learning to help that out yet, or not yet?
Of course, we're using it. Everyone's using AI. Our algorithms have been fast for the last few years.
Okay,
don't forget.
Good for you.
Don't forget, we're 6 hours ahead of you, so we're always ahead of you, Bob.
Well, sounds good. So most of these forums are they on the dark web, or are they on? Are you doing any Telegram forums or that sort of thing too? Or?
Yeah, I don't like to call it the dark web because most of the forums are just behind a login, aren't they? So,
okay.
It's no longer are hackers the big guy of Die Hard 2 down in the cellar with a big bushy beard with his mum shouting at him with grease food stains down his front. They are sophisticated organizations with their own web interface, their own structure, very clever people. And you've got to, is respect the wrong words? You've got to give them a lot of respect for their capability. Not for their output, but and this is another thing our industry needs to wake up. They're so way advanced on what they're doing, and you just can't keep up with them. So again, it then comes back to my main point: is how do you reduce the risk in order to make it harder for them to gain access? And we provide that's one small element.
Yeah. So. If somebody signed up for your service, what's the typical amount of time it takes for your customers to get notified of a breach, whether it's if it was their own company, or if it was in their supply chain? Is there?
So if they sign up, they get all the historical data. If they sign up the supply chain service, they get all the historical data. It takes about 24 hours. The manual bit we do is check, because you need consent. You don't need consent on the supply chain side. Because you're only looking at the top level domain and you're not exposing any person's PI, you're just doing the data types.
Right.
If you sign up, it takes 24 hours. The thing is, you've got to put in the name of the company you're monitoring, the name of the person who's given you consent. That's the only manual bit we do to double check that you're not telling porkies. Because what we don't want your service to be used as profiling your customers in order to sell business. Because under the UK ICO rules, Information Commissioner's Office, they will fine you more for profiling customers than anything else.
Wow!
So everything's done by consent. And we've only had one MSP who is no longer with us, because we kicked them off, that was putting in false email addresses because they wanted access to the data.
Oh, boy.
And our guys were checking it. So it's really important that whatever country you're in, we will stick to the regulations. And the USA, European and UK regulations are pretty much aligned on the notification periods.
So that way you keep your customers out of trouble and keep yourself out of trouble too.
It's all about, and also if you're monitoring 7 MSPs monitoring their client, you've got provenance again, use that word again, where the customer knows that the MSP and BreachAware are monitoring the client, and the liability has been signed off, or permission's been signed off by the end client that you're monitoring. So you've got to stay within the rules, and you can't buy data. Because if you're buying data, all you're doing is fueling the cyber criminals in order to make more money.
Right. Gotcha.
So I feel like I'm lecturing you.
Yeah, that's all right. Hey, this is all part of the learning process of what you do here.
Yeah.
So what level of data do you actually provide usually to these companies? Is there a limit on how much information you can provide I mean,
So it's all publicly available stolen data that's dumped on the web, surface web, dark web. Let's cover that.
okay. All right.
So if you look at the Equifax breach, that data was that 7 years ago? How many years ago? It wasn't 7 years ago, but it was a few years ago.
It was a while.
Yeah, that data is still being used and abused commercially wise.
Yeah.
You'll find most breaches will come up within 8-9 months. So they don't go on straight away. However, sometimes you'll get a guy who'll just dump the data. The Israeli Hamas war and the Ukraine-Russian war, they're just dumping data. So they're coming up straight away. So one of the guys will see it on the forum, and then we'll do all our checks, provenances, and we'll load it up. But you would only see it if you buy into the service. So what we initially did, we used to highlight all the breaches on our service for free, but we found that people were web scraping our information, whether it was the competition or just ordinary people. We used to have an API for free, and we're getting 16,000 hits a month. So we had to stop doing that because the same people were using it for commercial gain. So yeah, we try and be as we are completely ethical.
What is there something? Can you describe part of the process where you weed out any false positives or data that's not of value or that sort of thing?
Yeah, the email addresses, the spoof ones, we have a code that works out what the spoof ones are. You're asking a salesperson how they do it. But the duplications, we have a code that identifies duplications. They might have, say, 2 email addresses with 2 different passwords. That won't be a dupe, so we'll keep that in.
Okay,
but it's all been. It just goes through the churning. It's a learning exercise as well because the process has been tweaked.
Yeah. So you have to like revise that whole process from time to time.
Yeah. So there's a database called Demo Zaruk. That is a list of 205 million email addresses from email service providers. So it's not corporates, it's like Gmail's, Verizon, whatever. So I'll get that in. That's been dumped and we've loaded it. You can see on our chart, BreachAware.com, go on the dashboard. You'll see our chart go up. Loading 205 million email addresses takes a lot of space on our servers. So so doing that, you have to do it in chunks, and then something like that is a longer process. And the key thing, it's all about quality data. If you put crap in, you'll get crap out, and that's what we don't want to do. So we might take a day later. Someone might load it, and we might do it a day later.
Just to verify that everything's the way it should be, or good data, not.
I just turn my telephone off when my customer says, "Have you got that data breach?" Blah blah's got it. So I put it on for 24-hour delay. No, I don't do that. And we do make our customers wait. And I'm really pleased with the customers that buy into. We either have direct customers who buy directly from the service and sign up, or we have the partner level of the MSPs. I just enjoy watching the dynamic MSPs that we have because they're really aware of like looking inwards at themselves as well as looking outwards for their client base.
Gotcha. For your clients, do you ever have any evidence of who might be responsible for the breach from time to time? Does that ever come up?
So on a breach, what we'll do is that if there's any media references, it will go on the breach page, which will highlight where it's from. So there's a lot of lockbit ones flying about. If ZDNet report it, bleeping computers, all the usual culprits. We do have an RSS feed, so every breach that comes in, you'll see the date come in from the forum. You obviously identify it's free, and then you're thinking, well, there's no date from the forum. How old is it? And then so you go onto a couple of search engines and some RSS feeds. You type in has a bigcompany.com breach or a few keywords using AI, and then you it'll pop up and say either nothing. So you're thinking you have to take an educated guess,
Right.
or it will say this one was done in 2020, 2019. Don't forget, if you have been breached, you'll find out 2-3 years later in some cases. So, I mean, if you look at that mother of all breaches that was reported the other day, the 26 billion.
Sure.
Well, a lot of that was just regurgitated collections, combo lists, duplications. It was kind of hogwash, really. But we had to invest time in just to look at some of the data. There was new breaches there, but nothing.
But a lot of old breaches in there too, right?
Yeah, really old ones that have done the rounds.
Right. Sure.
So,
exactly.
And then one final thing is web scraping. There's a lot of web scraping going around. Is that a breach or is that not a breach? What do you think about that? Is a web scraping a breach?
Yeah, I think it depends on how you look at it.
Because LinkedIn gets done all the time.
Sure. I mean, if it was, if it's purposely like LinkedIn, I would say probably it's not a breach. But if it's people don't have it properly secured and they're doing some sort of SQL injection or, some sort of database manipulation where they're pulling the data to the surface and then exporting it, then definitely that would be considered a breach. But, if that all that data is sort of on the surface already, that's, it doesn't seem quite, it's public data, sort of, it seems like, when it gets that way.
I mean, we were talking about it. I went out to see a customer today, and we were talking about how do you hide yourself. And we were saying one of the options is actually that if you go shopping and you don't have any geolocation, you don't have any someone pestering you for a new deal that you've just bought in a shop, you just don't want the bank to know what you've been buying because you've all been following. Cash. Let's go back to cash. It's an option.
Sure. Yeah.
It's an option.
Absolutely. Sort of hard. I mean, if it's local, sure, definitely. If it's remotely, it's a little bit harder to do that, and you don't know if you can trust the person on the other end.
Oh, well. Cash is idea when you're visiting the pub and your wife's trying to work out where you are, and it doesn't pop up, ding. Oh, he's bought a pint there. But if you got cash, there's no ding on her telephone or on joint account.
Exactly.
She won't be listening to this podcast.
So are you going to have this service available for individuals here soon, you say? Is that?
Yeah, I mentioned we'd launched it last year, but we're looking at ways and means of launching it and looking for the ideal sponsor. So what we plan to do is two things. Is that if you're an existing client, you can monitor your own work email address for us for free. So if you work for bigcompany.com, not only the CISO monitors that, but Bob in the accounts department can say, well, I'll monitor my own department. So you create this kind of team environment.
Sure.
So the CISO's doing it and you're doing it. I think it's a good idea. And then the individual, we're going to skin the whole service and then create a impact risk tool with a number of impacts and data types, which will tell you what the impact is, what to do, and then we're good to do a nice little program plan.
Right.
And we're mainly aiming it so that it's a no-brainer that it will be about £1 a year to sign up to. But we're after the student element.
You want me to give you a £1 note?
They don't exist, Bob. Pound notes disappeared about 10 years ago.
Oh, did they? Show what I know.
It's a coin.
to coin, pound coin. Yeah. I give you pound coin. That shows you what a pound is worth nowadays, right?
A pound is worth $1.25.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
I remember when it was $2.90.
It keeps, it keeps on changing. Keeps on changing. Well, good deal.
Yeah, so,
well, how do people reach you if they want to find out more about BreachAware and becoming a client?
Well, if you want to talk about partnership or you want a demo or understand the service, you can email service@breachaware.com.
Okay.
Visit the website, breachaware.com, and it will take you onto a dashboard. We've created the website so it looks like you're going to an app.
Okay.
So you'll either like it or you don't like it. But that's our way we've done it.
Right.
Easy to sign up. We're just making some changes to the website. Should be going launch this Friday, Saturday. Slight changes. Makes the sign-up process easier. But follow us on LinkedIn, on BreachAware. Follow myself on LinkedIn. Kind of don't do Twitter at the moment.
Yeah, don't. It's okay. I follow you in BreachAware, so.
Yeah. All I do is regurgitate the stuff from LinkedIn. Service@breachaware.com and come and chat to us.
That sounds good. It sounds like a great service, and I think more and more people should be signing up for this. They're crazy not to.
Thank
you. Appreciate you talking with me today, and best of luck.
Happy Valentine's Day, Bob.
Happy Valentine's Day. You take care.
Cheers.